Good afternoon, folks. Triple Crown here, coming to you from Vancouver, British Columbia. This is a round one summary. Operation San Francisco. That's what I'm going to call this game. We were play testing what's happening when Japan goes full America right from turn one. So we will talk about what Japan did. Just trying to adjust there so you can see. So Japan purchased 3 naval transports. They had 30 to spend, that's 21, and they purchased an artillery and 2 SNLF Marines. So the Japanese basically brought their entire fleet, or most of their fleet, up here west of Tokyo, and they basically grabbed all of the ground units they could from Hainan, from Formosa. They did push a little bit into China, but that might have been a mistake. They did drop off some infantry and ground units over here in Manchuria. But next turn, the Japanese, they can load 9 naval transports. They start the game with 6. The Japanese did not annex Siam turn 1. They decided against it. They decided to keep everybody sort of central together. And why did I choose to go west of Japan instead of east? Well, I'm going to get into the reason why. And that is because I want to give Japan as many options as possible. So on the other side of the board, when Germany's setting up for, say, a sea lion, there is some telltale signs that, the allied player, if they're paying attention, can pick up on. And some of them are, maybe Germany's going to save its money turn 1, or are they keeping their ground units close to Western Germany to be loaded on transports on turn 2 or turn 3? And this scenario here, by having the entire Navy west of Japan, still gives them in range in 2 more turns of hitting the west coast of the United States. So they can go 1, 2, 3 over here to this sea zone, which is 136, and then go 1, 2 and hit San Francisco. But if this is what they call, sometimes Germany does a fake sea lion, so they want England to build all of their ground units back in London instead of helping out in Africa. Japan, if they wanted to, on turn 2, could, all this Navy here could head in a different direction. So basically, I'm just trying to give Japan some options. Japan did send some of its Navy here to the Carolines. They've got a couple cruisers there, 3 destroyers, and 4 submarines. So that's nothing to be ignored. Well, how did America respond? And the Canadians? So Canada first railed infantry from the East Coast over to British Columbia and built another infantry at the Colonial Factory. So now Canada has 3 infantry sitting in British Columbia. The Americans had 15 to spend. They built 3 infantry in San Francisco, and they railed 4 ground units from the West Coast, and they brought another infantry back from Hawaii. And they brought all their aircraft. This medium bomber starts out in the Philippines. They're all sitting in San Francisco, and America also brought its Navy back off of San Francisco, just sitting there. They are probably going to head towards the Panama Canal and get out of the Pacific Ocean should the Japanese come. And America, it's going to be interesting because, does Japan need to bring all 9 naval transports? Well, America's going to want them to. If you're going to want to land in San Francisco, America's, going to have about 22 or 23 ground units defending San Francisco, and the Japanese come. So America is basically saying, hey, if you're going to come, you're going to have to bring everything. And at the last minute, if the Americans could pull out their aircraft and retreat them, somewhere on their eastern United States to save them for another day, or decide to, basically keep them there for defense. So that's going to be something that's going to be what I call a game time decision. But if Japan only, say, brings 5 or 6 naval transports, well, then the United States could keep their aircraft there and help bolster the defense, and maybe the Japanese are not able to take it. So because the Japanese are sort of, you know, all amalgamated up here, they did not come really that far down into the Pacific. That allowed sort of the Australians and the New Zealanders to be a little bit bold in terms of they flew an aircraft over here to the Dutch East Indies Turn 1 along with their navy. They annexed over here, and the British came down from the naval transport off of Hong Kong and grabbed a guy, and they annexed Sumatra. Also, and this could have been a mistake for the Americans, and this is also sort of a little bit of a game in cat and mouse, because the Japanese were all of a sudden to come down here and land in, you know, Siam next turn. This purchase for the FEC might have been a mistake. They purchased a fighter and a armor unit, so that could have been a little bit of a mistake. They are getting set to attack Siam, so that'll be interesting there. They also annexed southern Iran, and South Africa decided to save their money. The Graf Spee came down here and sunk the South African transport, and the British came down with their 2 destroyers, and they sunk the Graf Spee and survived with 1 destroyer. So that's something that's always kind of fun, turn 1. This is the Italian Navy sitting off of east of Turin, just kind of hiding there. They are going to have the ability of a scramble. And why did they do that? And that is because the British have inherited 2 Free French destroyers and the entire Greek Navy, and also the Yugoslav Navy. So that is a formidable force. Currently, the 2 navies are sort of even. If you factor in that the Italians could scramble from their 2 air bases here in Turin and in Rome. So a little bit of a standoff, but standard moves for turn 1, basically build a minor IC in Tobruk and also in Cairo. So that's kind of standard. About half of the Free French and Vichy territories were kind of split all over the map. Syria did go Vichy, Marseille did go Vichy, and the Germans actually were quite lucky going into Reims. They, I think, only suffered 1 casualty, so they have quite a bit of their forces remaining in Paris, which is good for the Germans. The Germans also came down and took Yugoslavia on the second impulse. And the Yugoslavs, I think, might have rolled two hits. So the Germans did very well turn 1, except over here when they went into Warsaw, they got a little bit mauled by the Poles. So based on that, the Russians decided not to attack East Poland turn 1, which means next turn, if the Germans choose, they could attack East Poland. The Germans did inherit a battleship from the Free French and also a bunch of Vichy boats here off of the coast of Marseille. The Germans were successful in sinking the entire British fleet over here off of the coast of Scotland. However, they were not successful in killing the destroyer and battleship off the coast of Liverpool. And so the surviving German Navy up here, there was about 6 or 7 boats, was absolutely pulverized by the RAF and the surviving British Navy. The British Navy off the coast of Gibraltar came up here and sunk a lone German submarine that had retreated from the Battle of Liverpool. And the Canadians and the British built a destroyer over here. The British also inherited a Free French transport. The Germans inherited a Free French or a France transport over here that's now German. So Germany now has a naval transport in the Med, which is going to be a problem. And the Canadians are walking an artillery in a Dude to Ontario, going to walk to Alberta next turn. And the Americans did build a couple more ground units over here in Washington and have some of their Navy down here west of Panama. So the entire American Navy is now in the Pacific. So we will see what happens on turn 2, and stay tuned.